The BISKINIK of Choctaw folklore told the people of the good news across the land.
We continue our tradition
of spreading faith, family, and culture.
Chahta Athihaya Tikba Mahayaka, Iwakaya Cha, Anopa Achukmaho, Ilishtafama.
As our Choctaw people move into the future,
we rise and meet them with the good news.
This is BISKINIK.
Among the Choctaw Tushkas of World War I, 19 members were part of the Code Talkers, also known as the Telephone Warriors. The story of the Code Talkers begins in the heat of battle when Germany was winning. The opposition forces had successfully developed a way to decode all transmitted messages, making countermeasures virtually impossible. To fight the enemy, it was vitally important to develop a new way to code messages. Brave Choctaw men were recruited to transmit messages and devise a system of communication using our language. They created code words to translate back enemy moves. The tide of battle shifted in less than 72 hours because the Germans could not decipher our language. The Code Talkers were instrumental in winning many key battles, developing a code within a code of an impenetrable language.
There was a pilot program that started here in Durant to 5 area local high schools to just see what it would be like to offer Choctaw language through the interactive TV. And so it was a success. So from there, they started picking up schools, 10, 15, 20, which has gotten us up to about 45 schools. We were unique in that we were the only school in Oklahoma offering Choctaw language as a credit. And see, that was part of the law back in 1992, and some years forward, they began to say that you can take native language as a foreign language. Of course, we know we're not the foreign language, but you can take credit in high school, and you can also take it at the college level. So that had already been established just some years previous. That's why it was a green light for us to go ahead and go into the school systems. The main objective of the language program is to encourage and involve as many learners as we possibly can to learn the language, and at the same time knowing that people need resources and they need materials, that fluent speakers are not always going to be here to provide that instant answer for so many things. And so we're leaving behind, we're creating curriculum, we're creating textbooks, we're just finding different avenues and ways that we can leave it behind, even in using technology. The biggest challenge is that we cannot stay caught up with the loss of our fluent speakers, that every week we have 2 or 3 that die that are speakers. Those are things you cannot recover. So we know that even though with what we're leaving behind, even with the knowledge that we're passing on, there's still a deeper level, so much deeper levels of communication and understanding probably are not going to be recovered. So that is a challenge, and it is scary, and it is sad because we don't want to see that. But even though people are learning, it's not at a very fast rate, at the rate that we're losing it faster.
It is important to know our history and where we come from so that we can better understand our culture and traditions. Joseph Oklahomby was considered one of Oklahoma's greatest warriors. He crossed trenches under mortar fire into no man's land numerous times to assist the wounded and to bring messages back about the enemy. Victor Brown, Albert Billy, Tobias Frazier, and James Edwards, and many more were also members of the telephone operators during World War I. These heroes brought strength in a time of adversity.
My mother couldn't speak English. She only spoke the Choctaw language, so when she asked her to sign something, she just signed it without knowing. And what she didn't know was that she was signing for myself and my sister to go to a boarding school at Wheelock Academy. I lived there all year round sometimes. They didn't allow us to go home at summertime or Christmas. It just depended on if the superintendent thought it was okay for us to go, it was fine. If not, we stayed there the whole summer. And those were very lonely times because some of the other children got to come home and I didn't. We weren't allowed to speak, or we weren't allowed to sing our hymns. We did anyway. Many of us spoke to each other and we sung when they couldn't hear. If you were caught singing or speaking, you got a spanking for it. I believe that's why I'm so adamant, because when you're told that, you cannot do these things, and when they tell you you're not Indian anymore, that you're in a white man's world, your identity to be lost is deep. Even as a child, I used to wonder, well, what's wrong with being Indian? I love being Indian, and what's wrong with it? And to a child, and to someone else that might not mean that much, but I wanted to preserve it, nourish it, cherish it, and I'm very adamant in my teaching because of it. When we found out that we were about to lose our language, then some of the elders just decided we'll do something. So that's why I'm teaching. We'll teach it, and we'll sing our hymns, and we'll talk our language, we'll teach our language. That's why I believe that they see the enthusiasm we have now, because we finally realize that we're losing it. We don't want this generation to lose. It's so very important that we keep our language. I don't think that there would be one teacher, language teacher in our nation that would not want it to stop. It's who we are. It makes us unique. If we lose our language, we've lost everything. We've lost culture, we've lost everything else.
The Choctaw language was a formidable weapon of war. Back home, it was a time of cultural assimilation. Our people were being punished for speaking their language, while overseas, it was being used to communicate enemy moves. Even though they were seen as outsiders, Choctaws remained brave in the face of danger, graciously sharing our language in a time of need.
Choctaw kids knowing their Choctaw language just lets them be aware of who they really are and gives them a foundation to build on as they go out into the world. There are so many people here that are older that have carried on these traditions and kept them for us. But now it's time for the kids to really have that time where they take hold of it, and just show it to all the world. And I'm very fortunate to be here at Broken Bow. Our club has just a mix of kids. Of course, you have kids that are really strong in academics, strong in athletics, strong in art. But then we also have those kids who want to be strong in the culture and language. And with this, it gives us a chance to all mingle, figure out what we do best, and to help push this all forward.
You know, how it was back then where we couldn't speak in our language, and now we actually get an opportunity to start doing it. I want to take full approach on that and just keep it going. The efforts I think that can help preserve it more is by continuing what we're still doing today, holding powwows, holding different cultural stuff all around the world, and sharing more of our language around.
Where would we be without language, without communication? Every day we are losing speakers. In 1966, Tobias Frazier admitted he thought the language would be dead in the not too distant future. This year marks the 100th anniversary of that code talker legacy. Over the years, we have kept the language alive, but we must continue to teach, learn, and invest in our future.
Well, it's become very important, and it was something that I really didn't know much about growing up. I only knew a handful of words, and no one in my family was a fluent speaker. But now that I've become involved in it, really invested a few years of my time trying to learn the language, it's become much more important, and now I see that there are people involved trying to keep it going and trying to encourage others to learn. Language is really one of the things that defines our culture. I mean, everything about our culture, has a relationship to the language. We have our own terms for everything. We have our own ways of thinking about things. We have our own ways of, thinking about time, space, relationships with everything that's out there. And I think that if we begin to lose that, then we begin to lose something really essential about, what it means to be Choctaw.
It makes me feel good that, they are talking Choctaw, but I really don't think we'll ever get back to where it used to be. The Choctaw Nation wants it to be. I think the teachers, we have that too. We want people to be speaking Choctaw. But it's been dormant for a long, long time that it's kind of hard for it to come back up to where everybody's speaking Choctaw.
Here at the Choctaw Museum in Tuskahoma, you can learn about the code talkers and our ancestors who came before us. Or you can visit ChoctawNation.com in order to learn more about these extraordinary heroes. Language is a vital part of our past and future. It is important that we continue to practice our tradition in order to keep our language alive. That's it for this episode of BISKINIK, Hashimiti Pan in Shapinsa Chiki.